What's going on, guys? Welcome back to vlog number 5. Today's vlog is going to be a little bit different than what it usually is. Today I'm going to share my story about my past experience with severe anxiety and depression, and we'll talk a little bit about suicide too, so here we go. So growing up as a kid, I had a pretty normal childhood. I have a best friend who's still my best friend to this day. We hung out all the time, played outside tons. High school was good too. You know, high school kind of is what it is. There's some mean people in high school, but it really wasn't bad. And you know, life was pretty good. Life was pretty good. And long story short, I had needed to apply for colleges, and I had applied actually for Baylor University in Waco, and I didn't get in, so I kind of had to rush to find a school that I needed to get in about last minute, and I ended up at UNT up in Denton. And the first semester went really well, and I actually finished that first semester with all A's, 4.0 GPA, like everything was looking good. And after the first fall semester, we had been let out for winter break, and the winter break had come to an end, and I was on my way back to school to start my next semester. I think this was like a Sunday or a Saturday, and I was going to school, you know, either the next day or the day after. And on my way back, if you guys have been up to Denton, you guys know what I-35 looks like on the way up to Denton. You can see their nice new football stadium up there, and I was right about there on the highway, and I started experiencing really weird. My head, I felt really dizzy. My hands were getting real clammy. I was breathing really heavy, but I was sitting in a car, so it was kind of weird. I was like, what the heck's going on? Like, what is this? And I didn't realize until, you know, a couple of weeks later that it was my first ever experience with anxiety. I was pretty much having an anxiety attack in the car, but I toughed it out. I made it to the dorm, but when I made it to the dorm, I was just so stimulated and just on this another level of just anxiousness, just couldn't calm down at all. So I ended up not sleeping for probably more than 2 or 3 hours in a span of 4 days, and really, quite frankly, felt like I was losing my mind. After the 4th day, things started calming down a little bit, and I also had gone to, we have some psychologists on campus at UNT. I went and asked for help because I had never experienced something like this, so I was really scared, and I'm usually a really happy-go-lucky person, in a really good mood 9 times out of 10. If you know me, that's how I am. If you don't know me, that's how I am. So being really anxious, being really nervous, being really disconnected from people was really scaring me. I'm sure not sleeping didn't help with feeling really disconnected from the world, but I really didn't like it at all, and I couldn't figure out why I had anxiety. So I mustered up the courage to go talk to a psychologist on campus, and she was great. What she actually taught me was what catapulted me into, well, what I do today, and the reason I kind of saved myself from succumbing to depression and anxiety. What she went over with me was, she called them the 4 pillars of health. Pillar number one, in no particular order, she talked about exercise. Obviously, you got to exercise so that, we have this constant rush of endorphins, and they're also really beneficial for brain stimulation and creating new connections in the brain. So she said, number one, exercise. And number two was nutrition. As we all probably know, we are what we eat. And if we're eating like crap, we're obviously not going to be in the best state of mind and not in the best state physically, if you will. And number three was sleep. Getting quality sleep, getting enough sleep, and making sure that your sleep hygiene, and that's like your routine before bed, is good and up to sound. So that was number three of what she told me. Number four was having a good social network. So not Facebook or Instagram, having a real interactive person-to-person social network. So good friends, going out with friends, hanging out with friends, making sure you have quality friends and not toxic people, if you will. So that was number four. So she talked to me, she just went over these with me pretty briefly, and she basically said, if you don't have these four pillars, sleep, exercise, nutrition, and a good social gathering and social life, if you take any one of those away, if there's, say, a board on top of those four pillars, if you take one away, it's gonna fall, right? So she kind of illustrated that to me, and that worked really, really well for me. And unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the psychologist on staff there, but they were great, and they helped me out a lot. If probably after this video, I'll probably see if I can find her name, look her up, and I'll have her name down in the description. The UNT counseling department there was great. They helped me a lot. So if they ever watch this, thank you. But anyway, moving on. After I had gone to the psychologist, I kept that four pillars of health thing kind of in the back of my mind because I still had a long journey of about 4 or 5 months to go with this really crippling anxiety that eventually turned into depression also. So after I had seen the psychologist, we're maybe about a month or two in, and the anxiety is so crippling that it came to a point where at this point I lived in a dorm, so I shared a bathroom with 2 other roommates on the other side, called them suite mates, and one of my best buds lived in that next door next to me. And I remember one night very vividly, I couldn't sleep. Anxiety was really high, like it always was. Just constant anxiety, just really, really nervous, couldn't relax. I remember one night in particular, it was really, really high, and I freaked out. I literally got up, walked through the bathroom, walked into the room, and I was like, yo, I don't know what's going on, but I need to just be with good dudes right now. And is it okay if I pull my mattress in here and sleep on the floor? And of course, they're homies. Shout out Michael, shout out. And he's like, yeah man, just crash on the floor. At that time, it was really, one, it was really comforting, and two, it was also really embarrassing and humiliating that I'm probably 20 or 19 at this point, and I have to sleep on the floor of my good friend's dorm room because I can't relax enough to go to sleep by myself. So really frustrating, really discouraging, and I think at that moment is when I really started to get really depressed about my anxiety, because one, I didn't know why I was there. Two, it was limiting me from doing a lot of things that I could normally do, like flip of the button. I don't really think about it. So that's when my anxiety really started to transfer to depression, and they kind of started acting on each other. From that night when I had slept in my good friend's dorm room, I had actually gotten in contact with my parents. They only live in Keller, so it's only about a 30-minute drive back home. And I had told them the severity of it, what I was going through, how I just couldn't relax, I couldn't take anything to calm me down, nothing like that. I was fortunate enough to have them let me come home because for some reason I felt like being around them in an anxious state would have helped me. And I think it did, but so anyway, I moved back home. We're still enrolled in school and everything like that, and the dorm is still mine to live in, but I'm living at home for a good, maybe 3.5 months. And while I'm here, my daily ritual is pretty much getting up out of bed, walking downstairs. They have a long couch along the back wall of the living room, and I just sit in the corner seat and really just be almost like a numb mannequin, if you will. I would sit there, I wouldn't move, because with anxiety and depression, you have these really irrational thoughts, but at the same time you don't really feel anything. So you're like really anxious, but you're so anxious for so long that you start getting numb to everything around you, the beautiful sky and the really things that would get you kind of in your feels, if you will. They just don't when you're experiencing something like this. And it's really hard to explain if you've never experienced it, but if you have, I think you guys know what I'm talking about. So anyway, wake up, come downstairs, would sit on the couch, wouldn't really do anything. At this point, I had to commute to school, but as you can probably imagine, driving anywhere was really terrifying for me, because the first time I had an anxiety attack was in a car, driving by myself on the highway to school. So going to school was, for all you CrossFitters out there, it's like, going to school like that was like doing Murph, 3 times a week. Like, just really, really, really a large amount of effort, a large amount of exertion just to get in the car and go. Because again, the anxiety was taking over me, and my thoughts were really, really irrational, and it was hard to manage. I didn't know how to cope. So I remember this one time I was driving to school, and trying to drive to school, and I was only maybe 1.5 miles into the drive on the highway, and it started happening again. The first symptoms of an anxiety attack: sweaty palms, racing heart. Your eyes kind of just focus in, because they constrict because they're in that fight or flight mode. So it was just, everything was getting real intense, and you just feel like you're exercising, but you're just like sitting in a chair driving. So you should be relaxed, but you're not. So I remember I freaked out, having an anxiety attack, or maybe just fighting off one coming again. So I pull over on the side of the road. I actually had to call my stepdad. Shout out, Chewy. Shut up. I had to call him, and my parents were super supportive through this. He was like, all right, where you at? I'll come pick you up, blah, 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 this and that. He came and picked me up. He actually didn't come and pick me up, now that I think about it. He actually drove his car to where I was, followed me on the way back so I could feel somewhat safe, because it's someone I knew was on the road with me, I guess. Again, very irrational, but really hard to cope, because you don't really know how to handle it right now. And I'll get to how to handle it later. But anyways, followed me back home, and that's something I won't really forget, because it really illustrates to the support I had with my mom and my stepdad, and my whole family, really. That was just one of the stories to illustrate how crippling it was to really do anything functional or really simple, like driving. While I was still living at my parents', like I said, they're really supportive. So they reached out to another clinical psychologist, and I had some counseling sessions with him down locally, kind of in the Keller area. And he had introduced me into the concept of meditation in general. And little did I know that this concept and this idea would totally transform who I was as a person and really free me from the anxiety also. He taught me visualization techniques. He taught me mindfulness-based techniques and stuff like that. And so again, like that 4 pillars of health I talked about earlier with that other psychologist at UNT, I kept that meditation kind of thing to use kind of in the back of my mind, to rely on. But again, the anxiety is really crippling, so it's hard to do things that are good for you, because you almost kind of get addicted to just that anxious feeling. Like you just experience it so often that you almost get kind of used to it, and you kind of almost are like, okay, when is it gonna be here? Oh, there it is. So the self-help stuff took quite a while to you know, start seeing some benefits from it. But I know his name, that psychologist's name, his name is Matthew Bayston, and if he ever watches this, thank you. You also helped me tremendously with my life in general. So fast forward maybe about a month, and I'm still at my parents' house, still pretty much waking up, going downstairs, not really doing anything. After my parents had helped me find Matthew, that psychologist, he recommended I get on some antidepressant medication to kind of help calm me down, because when you have really high anxiety and depression, it's kind of hard to do anything. You really don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to move from the chair, for instance, like I was. And so it's hard. So they thought, oh, let's give him a little bit of antidepressant medication, anxiety medication, to help take the edge off, so that he can start using these self-help techniques and just living a little bit healthier. But when I got on this medicine, I was on lexapro, by the way, if anyone knows what that is. You know earlier how I said I felt really numb, disconnected from the world with anxiety? On this medication, for some reason, it made me feel 10 times worse, so 10 times more numb, 10 times more disconnected. And now I was starting to feel disconnected from myself, like who I was as an identity. So I had a lot of even more irrational thoughts, and when I was on this medication, I also started contemplating suicide also. And this scared the living shit out of me, because before all of this stuff started happening to me, I was really, like you guys probably know if you know me, very bubbly, very in your face, very lively, try to be, you know, a positive light in a lot of people's lives. And when I was on this medication, I really couldn't be. It really started disconnecting me from, it was almost like an out-of-body experience every day. Didn't really know who I was. Kind of just felt almost if you were to sit in a really dark room with like an annoying ticking clock, and you just can't, all you can do is just sit in that room, and this clock is just ticking, and you're gonna do anything to like disconnect and get away from that. So that's I guess in a nutshell to describe kind of what that felt, being on that medication while also having really bad depression and anxiety. The timing was pretty impeccable. At the time I started taking that medicine and I started contemplating suicide, my mom is I call her a tough lover. My mom talks to me one day and she says, you know, I know you're going through tough stuff, but she essentially said, I didn't raise you to curl up and just give up like this. And she, you know, she didn't mean it like in a really rude way, but she knows that would work for me, because that's kind of how we were raised, like kind of get it done. But she essentially said, you know, you weren't raised this way. I don't want you to curl up and give up. I want you to go fight for your life, essentially, and go back to school, go back to your dorm, and just be positive about it and get through it. That's pretty much what she said. And I was like, I don't know if you know what this is like at all. I don't really know if are you sure about this, whatever. And just long story short, when they told me, you know, you're going back to the dorm, what they ended up doing is they didn't let me have my car so I could come back. They just drove me up there like I was a high school kid again. They dropped me off and they left. And I was there to deal with my feelings, emotions, or lack thereof, by myself. So this is when I really had to hunker down and realize that, oh man, I need I need to figure something out. You know, I'm back at school, no car, really no option to leave and go back to my parents, which I think they knew would work for me, because sometimes I can be kind of an ultimatum kind of guy, like it's either all in or nothing. So I was like, well, I don't have a car, so I can't leave. So we got to figure this out. So I'm there at school. I'm trying to figure stuff out. I'm trying to get this anxiety to calm the heck down. So what I end up doing while I'm here by myself with no car, I'm not gonna lie, my studies did kind of deviate a little bit, but what I ended up doing was, from pretty much waking up to sleeping, I would get on my phone and I'd research everything about mental health, how nutrition plays with mental health, how meditation does, how sleep does, how pretty much how to have a better social life. Like, I was researching everything, and I researched just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours for probably 3 or 4 months, just hours and hours, just searching, just obsessing. And I think that helped me a lot, because I directed all of my anxiety and my obsession into researching how to make myself better. So where I really started to have the breakthrough first was, of course, exercise, because that's kind of easy to do. You just get up and go move your body, right? What I had researched was that exercise, specifically cardiovascular exercise, aerobic exercise, running, rowing, I dare say, you know, assault bike, echo bike, biking, anything like that that keeps your heart rate up, steady state cardio, if you will, showed in some fMRI brain scans to be beneficial in increasing brain activity, 1, and 2, increasing like regenerating synapses in the brain, which are like connections in the brain that build habits, if you will. So say, for instance, I had anxiety, but if I exercise and I'm doing all of these things, you get more blood flow to the brain, and you change the connections. Instead of associating, you know, high heart rate and stuff all the time with only anxiety, you can slowly start to reconnect the synapses and the neurons in the brain to associate high heart rate and everything like that with exercise a little bit more. And then once you associate it with exercise, that endorphin rush you get after exercise, that kind of calming and tired effect, you also kind of calibrate and kind of solidify that in the synapses in your brain also. So that's what I had found with a little bit of research, or a lot of research really, and that started helping a lot. I remember a couple days I'd be running on the track, and I'd be running and I'd like be having a panic attack while I was running, and it was like the weirdest thing ever, because I was like, my heart rate was already up, but then I'd like freak out and get anxiety for no reason, because again, they just come and they go at no mercy. They don't let you know when they're coming. But I remember I was running and I was like, whoa, what is this? And I was like running and my heart rate was already high, and then it got even higher. So that was definitely a journey and definitely a struggle to get through. But after that, I started diving into nutrition, and nutrition is something I really love, because when I started implementing the things I learned from nutrition, it really started kind of catapulting me to controlling how I feel on a day-to-day basis. So honestly, for probably 2 years after I had learned this, I had learned about calming foods, if you will, almost like tryptophan, like you know, they talk about that with like turkey, like after Thanksgiving and stuff like that, and slow releasing carbs like oatmeal and rice and stuff like that. For about 2 years, I ate oatmeal for every meal of the day, with eggs, spinach, blueberries, and almond butter. And you know, that's pretty much what I ate for 2 years, because 1, it had a lot of that tryptophan stuff in the oatmeal and things of that nature, but I had also researched and learned about the benefits of antioxidants and the benefits of kind of a plant-based diet, if you will. All those nutrients and minerals coming in are pretty beneficial for the brain as well, and for overall health just in general. And I also had researched and stumbled upon the amount of fat intake, specifically omega-3 fatty acids that are present in tree nuts like cashews. Walnuts is a really good one, almonds, and salmon and stuff like that. How beneficial that was to the brain, and also the development of the brain also. So yeah, for like 2 years I'd eat nothing but, I'd eat about a cup of oatmeal with a handful of blueberries and almond butter, and then I'd eat like 3 or 4 eggs with like a good amount, like probably 2 handfuls of spinach or kale. Just throw it in there, and I kid you not, guys, that's literally what I would eat for 2 years, with a couple of different variations every now and then, like every day, like every single day. Because for some reason when I started doing it, I started just feeling calmer. I started feeling a lot calmer, and I didn't feel as I kind of call it like an inflamed feeling. I didn't feel as like bloated. I didn't feel as heavy. I didn't feel as like kind of burdened or anything like that to myself. I just felt really light and a little bit freer from my thoughts, to be honest. There was some distance there, so I could kind of find some peace in between thoughts. That was really I believe from food, from what I was eating. High quality foods coming in, and I'm gonna feel high quality, if you will. So the next one kind of worked upon nutrition. When I started eating better, and obviously I was exercising too, I started sleeping better, because also cardiovascular exercise is really beneficial for sleep quality as well. So I consequently started sleeping better. I was sleeping through the night, and it started working really well for me. So when a lot of this stuff started working pretty well, I was kind of scared to what I should do about the medicine I was still taking. Remember, I was still taking anti-anxiety medication, but I was kind of scared. I was like, I really don't like this medicine because of how it makes me feel, and the fact that I'm feeling this much better using the foods and the exercise and sleeping better, why don't I just like cut this thing off? Like, let's get this shit out of me. I ended up actually quitting the lexapro literally cold turkey. Like one day I was like, you know what? We're gonna figure this out holistically, using food, exercise, and sleep, and then we're gonna get to meditation later. But those are the 4 things I use, and I was like, you know what? Screw this damn medicine. It's making me feel like shit. I'm gonna throw all this shit in the trash, and I'm never gonna refill it again. And that's what I did. And it was scary because I had heard about, if you get off this cold turkey, more suicidal thoughts can come, your depression can get worse. So that was something I was really concerned about. And again, this is just my personal testimony. So if you're on it, I wouldn't recommend it. I would talk to a doctor before you do it. I took a risk with it, but I wouldn't recommend that you do it. Please make sure you talk to a licensed psychologist or medical professional before you think about doing that. If you're watching this and are thinking about that, please make sure you talk to somebody first. But I had actually quit that cold turkey, and thankfully nothing really bad happened. If anything, everything started to just slowly get better and better and better. And the last thing that I started using, which was really icing on top of the cake, cherry on top, just everything, like new wheels on a Bugatti, everything, was mindfulness-based meditation. And I had found this app called Headspace. It's on iPhone and Android, by the way. But it's pretty much, it's an app that was created by a previous Tibetan monk who was a monk for about 10 years. He lived in England, and he was in a group of friends, and a car had actually crashed into his group of friends and killed almost all of them. And after that, he tried to move to the States, for instance. And when he moved to the States, he realized that his mind was still right there with him. All the feelings, all the thoughts, all the emptiness and stuff like that, it was still there with him, no matter if he left England where it happened and came to the States. So he realized that you know, his mind is going to go wherever he goes. It's always going to be there. The experiences are always going to be with him. And he took the extreme route and went and became a monk in Tibet for about 10 years. And obviously learned very well how to cope with all of these things that were inside of him, to come to peace with it and everything like that. So he actually came back, long story short, moved back to the States and wanted to help people probably heal themselves kind of like he did himself. And he created the app called Headspace. I'll put the link down to that app in the description, by the way. But he created Headspace, and it's a mindfulness-based meditation app. The meditations range from literally 1 minute to an hour. You do 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then a whole hour. And they're all guided. Some of them aren't guided, but I would say 97% of them are guided, with him telling you exactly what to do. And they actually have packs that you can take. You can do like sleep, for instance. If you're having a hard time getting to sleep, they have a sleep pack, and it progresses. The meditation progresses. It gets a little bit more complex in order for you to learn a little bit more meditation techniques, so that you can implement them in your daily living and live more mindfully, and just have that headspace, that calm kind of feeling you have in your head. So I had found this app while I was in college, again, researching hours and hours and hours and hours. I had stumbled upon it, and you know, really with that app, it really showed me that my thoughts and my feelings aren't who I am as a person. They really don't define me, and they don't define how I'm gonna act on a certain day. The feelings and emotions, they come and then they go. So just learning that was huge for me, because I was starting to identify myself as anxiety and depression. That was pretty much who I was identifying myself as, because I couldn't escape it. So when I got this app and I started slowly using it more and more, and started learning that philosophy that, you know, the emotions and feelings, they're fleeting, they come and go, they're very variable, and everything's changing. I saw the world very differently, I saw people differently, and I saw myself very differently too. But that, amongst other things within meditation, really helped me. That was a true catapult into really curing myself of the depression and anxiety. How crippling it was, I really freed myself using that meditation app. So this isn't like some paid promotion or anything. It's just real talk. That's really what I use, and it's really what helped me, and I'm super thankful for it. So, you know, that is, in a really short, condensed version, my story about my crippling anxiety and my crippling depression. And I just wanted to share it with you guys, because if any of you guys are struggling with it, sometimes it can be hard for people to tell that you are, because a lot of people, I tell them now that I was, and they knew me back then, and they were like, really? You were struggling with that? I couldn't tell at all. I had no idea. So people who maybe aren't experiencing it, if you have loved ones, just check on them all the time, every other day. Just make sure you're there for them, check on them. And people who do have it, please do not be afraid to get help. Don't be afraid to talk to someone who does come and check on you, to talk about your feelings. Don't be afraid to, you know, to explore options. Don't be afraid. If you guys have any questions you want to ask me about how you can ease some anxiety and stuff like that using a little bit natural methods, please feel free and ask me. It's a big reason why I coach CrossFit, and it's a big reason why I'm just all about people, is because my life was almost not my life anymore. And yeah, I see where I'm at now as a second chance at life, pretty much. I didn't, you know, go through with suicide or anything, but it felt like I was dead. And the reason I love being around people, and I love coaching people, and I love bettering people's health because I know if I better their health, it's gonna better how they feel about themselves in their head. And if I think self-confidence is everything, self-image is everything. How you feel about yourself is how you're gonna treat others. So I feel like I'm really here with a second chance of life, giving it a go, my best go, and not taking anything for granted, and being really, really grateful for the job I have, for the girlfriend I have, for the friends I have, for the parents I have, for the for the car I have, for the simple sheet I have, just everything, because I know what it's like to not feel anything at all. So that's my story. If anyone's wondering why I love CrossFit so much and love health and fitness so much, that's my story about why I will forever be in this CrossFit game, in this fitness game, in this wellness game, in this mindfulness-based meditation game, in this nutrition game, is because I owe literally my life to all of those things. To every single one of those things I just listed, I owe my life to it. If it wasn't for my family and all those other things, I don't think I'd be here. So that's my story. If you guys want to chat, share your story, I'd be more than happy to listen and hear about your story. We'll talk about our stories together. But thanks, guys. See ya.